categories of leg lock movements I can play. From top versus from bottom. If I'm playing it from bottom, I want it to be an extension of my sweep game, including my wrestling up game. If I'm playing it from top, I want it to be an extension of my passing game. A lot of people, I'm sure you guys have heard the joke, leg locks can't pass guard. I mean, hey, it's true sometimes. But if you're playing leg locks correctly, it should make your guard passes more effective. And your guard passes should make your leg locks more effective, because I'm letting my opponent kind of pick the poison he wants to die by. So let's say my opponent is playing supine guard on his back, and he's just playing a basic open guard, right? Supine meaning he's all the way back instead of seated up. If I'm in this type of situation here, of course, we can play a lot of our no-gi Torianda type options, right? What's his reaction going to be when I do that? Well, it's probably going to be a turn towards me, right? Because he wants to still be in a position where he can get his legs back in between us. If he's focused on getting his hips between us, by definition, he's trying to connect his legs to me. As opposed to, if he knows I'm going after his legs, he's trying not to connect his legs to me, or some variation thereof. So one of my favorites here is he's like, okay, he's going to start trying to Torianda. He's already in shift his hips towards me, trying to get his guard back mode, right? So do that one more time. I'm here. He wants to be able to turn his legs towards me, start to get his legs back attached. Get some sort of a defensive frame in the way. Maybe I've tried this a couple of times. Man, I just can't get around this guy. All right, you know what? I'm going to guard back. Just kidding. No, I'm not. And now, right where I want to be in terms of my offensive flow. This puts me in a 4-11 with my opponent's leg on the inside. In terms of your leg entanglement from this point, which one I choose is going to be largely dependent on which hip I go to. Right now, I went to the outside hip. So I'm crossing my ankles, and I'm pinching my knees. The mistake that a lot of people make on this is if my opponent turns to the other side, which a lot of smart defensive players will do, is they stay here. You can still do this, but me pinching my knees has made him extracting his knee line very, very, very easy. So as soon as I feel my opponent switch me to the other side, I want to flare my knee. My bite is now between my heel/calf and my hamstring. There. That bite, not that bite. That's a very common mistake that I made for a long time. I'd be like, okay, I got a good look at this guy. Let's start heel hooking him. And he would start hiding his heel and turning the other way, and I'd be like, oh no, why am I losing the guy? Because you got to adjust your hips depending on the look that your opponent gives you. If you just add that little tweak into your offense, you're going to control far, far, far more of your leg locks. So, I got to here. My opponent turned me. I'm immediately flaring my knee. I'm protecting it with my right foot. Turn this way, if you will. I'm stomping my right foot on top of my left ankle, and I am sliding my butt towards my heel. That is the bite. This is simply to reinforce it. Try to pinch your knees, you're going to lose them here. If I've done my job correctly, this should be a very easy break, and I'm trying to loosen my legs up so you guys can see the motion. But for right now, I just want you to get into the position. Don't worry about the finish on it. So again, from the beginning, I step to the outside. I slide my right arm over the top. As I sit to my left hip, shoot my leg over the top, cross my ankles, pinch my knees. My opponent knows he's in trouble, so he immediately starts to hide. So I'm going to go to my, they call this the fat man, because I'm basically putting my belly on top of my opponent's leg, locking him in place. Now I can get into the bite that I'm looking for my finish. The biggest thing is heel to butt, take a contraction, back clamp with that piece of your leg, not with this piece of the leg. One more time, a little bit quicker. Step, hook, slide. Get my lock, he turned, immediately step my right foot on top of my left foot. Now I'm in position to start hooking. Don't worry about the finish, just get into the entanglement. We'll play more from that in a few seconds. Comments, questions? You'll slide from my hip, leg goes over the top. First option before he turns his hip. If he's smart, he's already turned his hip, but if he hasn't, first thing I'm going to do from this point here is simply finish my straight foot lock. It is more difficult to finish a straight foot lock on the inside, in my opinion. There's varying theories on that. It's more difficult for him to extract his leg on the inside, and it's easier for me to switch to other locks on the inside. But it's also harder for me to get a good breaking angle on a straight foot lock. So don't burn yourself out here. We're checking, see if the guy wants a way out. If he's stubborn, don't worry about it. Go to your next option. But let's check. There's a lot of people don't tap here. A lot of different ways to skin a cat when it comes to straight foot locks. What I'm looking for on this variation is that little notch right past the thumb, which we'd be playing playing for doing like a guillotine style, I'm putting that little notch right past my opponent's tendon. On this one, I do not want to come elbow deep or anywhere close to elbow deep. All I want is that. Now, what do I do with all this space? I close it over the top of my opponent's heel, making sure that I'm biting his foot in a vice underneath my armpit. At the same time, my other hand, I'm going to make a right hand flat. My left hand is still going to hook over the top of it, just like I'm doing a guillotine. You'll actually see people throw the elbow high, just like they were doing a guillotine on this finish sometimes, although that's not strictly necessary. So I close my elbow. As I do that, I'm coming up to my shoulder. I like to make a 45-degree angle with my hips. If I've got this position correctly, that should be a very easy angle to make. You can go completely belly down. There's nothing wrong with that, but if your opponent is flexible and tough, you run into the mat, you can't go any farther than 180 degrees. If I stay at a 45-degree angle here, I've got gravity helping assist me, and I can also go well past 180 degrees depending on how much my opponent wants me to put on. Take care of your teammates, don't rip on it, but get our bite, come up to my shoulder, look over your head. It makes a shocking amount of difference if you do that versus if you do that. Keeping your head down doesn't seem like it should matter, but picking your head up, pushing your chest out makes a massive difference on whether this goes from uncomfortable to actually being able to break bones. 1, 2, 3. We're always trying to create that angle. What I don't want on any straight foot lock, inside or outside, is that. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what a foot lock does, but that's the way his foot is designed to move. What I want is that, like you're rolling your ankle walking down the street. As soon as I create that angle, now these little bones and tendons, ligaments on the outside start to take a tremendous amount of damage. And that is what I'm actually looking to attack. Not the way the foot naturally bends, the way that it doesn't naturally bend. Any questions on that, guys? You see that one more time? Please. Whole thing, from the beginning. Threaten, hook, sit. Oh, I'm already right here, great. I'm flaring my elbow if I'm being nice. When I'm ready to break it, I'm biting the elbow down. Look over my head, make sure your hips are up, closing on my shoulder and knee. 45-degree angle into the mat. He should be tapping in practice at about 20%. I should be able to shred that if I want to. Questions, comments? Our left hip, we monitor, and we get into our angle from this point. I am primarily focused on controlling my opponent's knee line. That's why I'm doing everything that we talked about with my hips. If I'm here and let's say maybe my opponent has a really long arm and he peels my hand out, right? Okay, well, my straight foot lock opportunity is gone. If we stay here, I break the ice, make him turn his heel up, I get my wrap, I go to my butterfly grip or my cup and saucer grip. Some people like to go reverse. I don't love reverse personally because of my rib issues, but those are totally fine as well. This is a very easy finish from this point, right? So this is kind of a sneak peek at the defensive standpoint, which is if my straight foot lock doesn't work, whether it's because I was late, whatever else went wrong, he's probably turning this way and trying to hide that heel. Now just because he hides the heel doesn't mean that the battle's over, but it was a really smart step one on his part, right? Once we get to this point, the first thing that I'm going to look for as I transition my legs is, did he actually hide his heel, or did he just sort of hide the heel? So if I'm here, I put my hand behind my back, I pick my hips up, I got my left foot on the mat, I got my right shoulder on the mat, I put my right arm behind my back, and I'm going to see, can I get my hand behind his heel? Can you guys see what I'm doing right now? Mm-hmm. So I was here, I put my shoulder on the ground, and I slide my right hand behind my back. See how his toes are in my armpit now? Now I'm going to put my weight back down. Hey, looky there. I guess his heel wasn't hidden as well as we thought it was. Everybody see how that happened? It's not always going to happen that smoothly. If he's really hiding the heel, I might not be able to get that dig quite as easily as that. I'm going to have to do more work to find a way to get the angle I'm looking for. But it's often going to be there. Even if the guy is kind of hiding the heel, he might not be hiding it as well as he thinks. So I'm here, hips come up, arm goes behind my back, hip comes in just a little bit. Hey, looky there, that's what I like. Once I get to this point here, I recommend going to the butterfly grip because that's a lot tighter, especially with long arms like I do. Palm to palm might leave him a little bit too much space to slide his heel back out. I don't want to go all the way to the crook of my elbow, of course, because he'll slip. But if I'm here and I'm leaving too much space, he's gonna slide down to the elbow and do the exact same thing. So for me, having relatively long arms for my body type, I find that this is the best hybrid of the two when my opponent's leg is on the bottom. Once I get wrist to wrist, that's a very easy breaking angle. Don't do what everybody does, which I did for a long time, which is you get a heel hook and you start pulling on it. He's just gonna rotate with me. And that makes his escape very easy. I'm literally steering him into his escape route. If he doesn't panic, he's out. So when I get to this point here, this is where I want to be. From his perspective, it was good because he could kind of hide the heel, but I was still able to dig it out, which means now this is exactly what I want, because he's now on the wrong side to escape once I've already got the heel. I get my butterfly, I put my shoulder on the mat, I pick my hips up slightly. I'm gonna do this with tight grips first. I'm gonna go very slowly, tap when you feel it. Not a lot of movement there, is there? What I'm doing is that I'm driving my hips into the side of his knee. All my arms are doing is isolating the lower part of his body so that this can't turn with it. If his foot was here, and then he was pointing up, and I start driving my hips into his knee, watch what his ankle does. Turns that way, right? Now his knee bends and no harm done. All I'm doing when I heel hook my opponent is making sure that that can't do that. Pulling on the leg is rarely the right option when it comes to heel hooks, even though that's what it looks like is happening. My arms are simply holding it still. My hips are dislocating the knee. And as you get good at this, you kind of start to get that mind-muscle connection. You should literally be able to start to feel the two parts of your opponent's knee shift. Like, kind of like a doctor who's checking for injuries. You know how they'll see how much play there is in that joint? I should be able to do that just in a more destructive mindset than a doctor would do. There, I can feel, okay, that's as much play as there is in the hip. A fraction of an inch more, and it's going. So, if I'm here, my opponent hit, turn to the other side, I'm gonna pick my hips up, see if I can dig that heel out. Great, I could, awesome. Like I said, you could probably do this one armed, but let's secure it a little bit stronger just to make sure, and bridge in very slightly. Be very quick to tap on this, guys. If your opponent has the heel and he's got his weight on it, just tap. There's no fighting out of it at that point unless you're really good. If you want to practice the motion, get the grip, let go of the heel, and then practice the actual finish. But kind of separate those two if you want to build those breaking mechanics. You guys need to see that again? Does that kind of make sense? One more time. Threaten the pass. Threaten the straight foot lock. Oh, he turned, hips up, hide my right hand behind my back, drop his heel into the pocket, bring my hand back forward. I'm going to my butterfly grip here, foot over the top, knee in the wrong direction when I'm isolating my opponent's foot. Cool? Give it a shot. 1, 2, 3. Left hip is now the exact opposite of what I want, right? Because my heel is now very exposed. So, if you go back one step, please. I was safe-ish here. I'm at least ready to start a defense. If my opponent turns my leg to the outside, I'm now not safe. Go back one step. As I feel him do that, I need to shift from my left hip to my right hip. And now I've got options to be able to start playing my back takes or my simple extractions. If my opponent gets me here and passes my foot back to the inside, stay with 411 for now. Yeah. If he passes my leg back to the inside where I was safe, I'm no longer safe because my heel's exposed again. Nature of the beast. If you turn your heel in and he passes it over, heel's exposed. So go back one step. As I feel him pass from outside to inside, I shift to my inside hip. He goes back to the outside. I shift to my outside hip. He goes back to the inside. I shift to my inside hip. Notice that I didn't say I turn my leg. Everybody does that when they start, myself included. My opponent passes, and they're like, I'm gonna turn my heel while staying on their outside hip, or in this case, on their inside hip. You can't really hide your heel with any effectiveness while facing the wrong direction. Just like if Coach Jamie's shoulder pressuring you, you can't get your guard back because you're turned 2 different directions, right? Same thing here. If I'm facing left, I can't also turn my heel in. So if I want to hide my right heel while it's on the outside, I need to be on my right hip. Now I have at least a position that I can fight from. This is not an escape. This is simply setting the stage to where I can escape. One more time back to the inside. I go to my inside hip. He goes to the outside. I go to my outside hip. That will at least give you a lot more of a fighting chance. So start with the 411, inside, outside. Just play it back and forth 4 or 5 times and let your partner try. If you play with other leg lock entanglements, you want to do this from a 50-50 or from a single X or whatever the case may be, feel free to do so. I mostly just want you to get comfortable. Hide the heel, we'll build off that. Questions, comments? What do you think? Ways my opponent play the entanglements. If I talk about, here's 8,000 different leg locks and here's 8,000 different defenses for them, I'm not going to remember those. And I doubt you guys are either, right? So that's why I want to think in terms of concepts. Concepts like, it's generally a good principle to keep your opponent's ribs against your heel. Are there exceptions? Sure. But generally speaking, that's a pretty good principle to start building your defense off. But it's not going to be the be-all and end-all of whether or not you can escape. So I want you guys to be thinking about this in terms of both ends of the stick. Let's say I'm doing an armbar on my opponent, right? Basic armbar from top position. Here's a pretty good tight armbar, right? Is that going to work on a guy like Drew? No. Why? Too far away. I've got virtually no control of the bottom side of the limb I'm attacking, right? How about, okay, let's get nice and tight here. I'm really controlling the bottom. Is that going to work? I doubt it. Not on a guy who knows what he's doing. What was the problem there? It was way too loose on the top side of the lever, of the limb that I'm attacking, right? Anytime you're attacking any joint, you're going for some sort of tight control above the target and below the target. And then you should be able to actually do damage to the joint, to the target. Leg locking, that's even more true, if anything. So if I'm the offensive player, I need some type of really strong control, generally some type of a wedge at the top side of the limb, and I need some type of really strong control on the bottom side of the limb. Once I get to here, now it's extremely easy to start ripping the knee apart. Which means, when my opponent is, or if you go to the offensive standpoint if you don't mind, if my opponent is attacking me, I'm now making the far end of the limb, the top side, difficult for him to control correctly. Assuming that he's got really good control on the top, I better have something interfering with him having good control on the bottom, or we're done here. I'm tapping. However, if my opponent has really good control on the bottom, well, that's not ideal. Let's say he doesn't have great control on the top. I mean, I don't love where I'm at, but I'm not done yet. And that's something, like I said, I've been playing leg locks for 7, 8 years, and it's been a really serious piece of my game now. The last couple, I've been putting a lot of time into, what if they get the bite on the heel? Like, where am I actually in danger? Like, we tend to panic when somebody touches our heel. And that's not a bad thing. Like, in practice, tap quick. Don't risk injuries if you're not really sure where you're at. But when I'm going with, experienced leg lockers who I know aren't going to just rip me to shreds, but they know what they're doing, it kind of gives me a chance to play like, okay, so am I caught or am I not? Because a lot of the time, if I can interfere with the bottom side, I don't care if he's got good top side. And on the other side of the same coin, if he doesn't have good control on the top side, like go ahead and let go of the heel, but he has really good control on the bottom, I'm also not in a ton of danger. So we kind of think of those in two different kind of standpoints, whether you want to call it curative and preventative, or just two sides of the same stick. The principle is the same. I either need this end loose or I need this end loose. And if I've got one, I'm not panicking. So you'll see me occasionally in really deep heel hooks, but he doesn't have the angle he needs to actually go after my knee. Like, this can be as stuck as he wants it. That's fine if he can't get the angle he needs to actually do damage to my knee, right? And I've got a million different directions that I can go from here, whether it's the more complex back takes or just as simple as, let's stop this now. Does that make sense? So for right now, let's go really, really simple, right? What we were doing a second ago was we don't let him get the bite in the first place. Now, let's assume he got the bite. I'm not going to let him scoot his butt in, plant his foot, wedge everything to where it should be. Here, I'm done. He's ripping my leg apart. But ideally, go back one step. Start digging my heel out. Oh man, he's winning that. I better win this. I keep that down. I should have a really good chance to get that foot into position. We can make this a tiny bit more complicated. If we're here and he's a step ahead of me, where he's got that knee in position and I didn't collapse his wedge, he's ready to start finishing me. What did I say? You don't want to pull on the leg, right? You don't want to rotate me into my escape route. Well, it might not be his choice. I might be like, ooh, he's going to start to rip my leg apart here. He wants to drive his hips that way. I bet you something good will happen if his hips rotate that way. That allows me to get my leg out very explosively if I need to, but the principle is the exact same. I don't have a lot of time to play around here. If he's hip in, he's about to shred my leg here. I'm catching his knee with the crook of my elbow as I'm rotating here, which means he can't drive his hips through my knee. Most of the time, they're going to try to stay attached. So I'm usually going to have to fish my leg through in order to be able to extract it. Don't worry about doing that one right now. That's simply a slightly more complex application of the exact same principle, which is still a relatively simple one. Rotate something. I'd rather rotate that end, but if I can't rotate that end, I'm rotating this end. I like to do it nice and simple, but if he doesn't let me do it simple, I can make it a tiny bit more complicated. And then we can start getting into your advanced back kicks, crab rides, ring leg locks, etc. that come off of the exact same thing, but all of those involve that principle of I need to rotate one end, or I need to rotate the other end. If you can rotate one, they won't be able to do any damage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Last time. He hides the heel. I feel him starting to dig it out. Collapse. Replace your hand with your foot. Nice, simple. Heisman. Foot goes where the hand does. Now I just pedal bike. Knee to my chest. Foot to his chest. Doesn't get me anything. As far as position, I'm standing up and I'm like, all right, now I'm passing without getting my leg attacked. But at least I'm not engaged. One more time. I hit my heel, but not well enough. He got me. All right, let's collapse that. Let's put that foot in position. Pedal the bike. Pull the knee out. Questions, comments? That is the simplest leg lock escape I know, but it gets me out of a lot of bad spots. If you have trouble, yell at me. 1, 2, 3.